Welcome to those that have joined us. We will begin the webinar at 12 o'clock. Good afternoon and welcome. As we're waiting to begin the webinar, I will just welcome those that are joining us. I can see the attendee count going up. So welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us. We will officially begin at 12 o'clock. I see that it's 11:53. If you see me looking to the right, I'm looking at my phone, which has the time. So welcome. And we see a number of people that are continuing to join us. So we welcome you, glad to have you here. Welcome. Brenda, are you able to join us by video? I see that you're joined by microphone, but are you able to join by video?
I am here, right below you.
Ah, wonderful. There you are. Terrific. Great. So Brenda and I are both here. We both welcome you. Brenda, you can probably see the attendee count going up, which is wonderful to see people joining the webinar.
That's
We will
great.
not officially begin until 12 o'clock, so we can informally welcome people. I just got a message saying LinkedIn for Lawyers starts in 5 minutes.
It popped up on mine as well.
Yeah, good.
It's making sure we're not going to be late for it.
That's right. That's right. And for anyone that was on the call while we were having our dress rehearsal, you saw us doing our dress rehearsal. You know we're here. You know we're excited about the use of the technology and about having you all here today. And I will say this a couple of times, apologize up front for saying it a couple of times. Feel free to use the Q&A if you would like to communicate with Brenda or I. Sometimes when people are joining from places like Sweden or out of the country or Albuquerque, New Mexico, we'll see that come up on the board. If you'd like to share where you're calling in from, happy to know some of the remote, not so remote places that people are joining us from. Brenda, anything you want to add while we're waiting?
Well, I'm just very excited to talk about this topic today. I am thrilled that people are joining us. Not only did they register, but they showed up. Oh my God. So I'll let you know that I'm speaking to you today, Mary Claire from Florida.
And the weather in
We're-
Florida?
Actually, it's a little cloudy, but it's hot. It's warm.
How hot is hot?
Sorry. Yeah.
How hot is hot?
Oh, it's probably in the 80s. I actually have not been out since very, very early morning when it was maybe in the 70s. The humidity is probably picking up. So, you know, there's good things and bad things about being in warm weather. Humidity is probably not one of the good things.
Yeah. Yeah. We had somebody join us from Princeton, New Jersey.
Hey, New Jersey. I used to live there many years, for many years.
We have somebody who has raised their hand. This is a webinar platform. This is not a Zoom call. I am happy to allow you to speak, but just know that you will be broadcast to everyone. If you, oh, that hand went down. Okay. And just again, as people are coming on, it's 11:57. We won't officially begin until 12 o'clock. You are on a Zoom webinar platform. All of the participants are in mute, which means that you can hear and listen. Your picture, your name, your information is not being broadcast on this webinar. If you would like to send information to Brenda or I, please, I'm sorry, I just saw something that came in on the Q&A. Please communicate to us through the Q&A. And we have somebody joining us from Maryland, their first time on Zoom, thanking us for this program. You are very welcome. Thank you for that feedback and letting us know, A, where you're coming from, and a first-time Zoom user. And just again, so that people know, there is a difference between being on a Zoom webinar and a Zoom meeting. This is a Zoom webinar, which means that all participants will be in the listen only. You will not be able to see who else is in or on the webinar. If there's somebody else who has their hand raised, I'm just going to say the same thing. If I click on you, you will be speaking live to everyone. If that's your, oh, the hand went down. Okay. So yeah, for a lot of people, when you're used to or seeing a Zoom call, you think that you're going to be able to see the participants. We have a couple hundred people who've signed up today, which just would be overwhelming to have that number of people. So this is designed, and the format is a webinar format, which again means that all participants are in the listen only and your picture is not displayed. Please use the Q&A function if you have questions. If you if you do raise your hand and I pick on you, you will be broadcast to everyone, just again, so that everybody knows that. We have somebody in New Jersey from ADP. Welcome, welcome. It's fun to see where people are coming in from. And
Mary Claire, I wonder if anyone's on the webinar from Florida.
If so, please identify yourself. We'd love to know that.
We'd love to know if Florida is in the house.
Okay. And I'm not seeing others who are volunteering with it. Up, we got from Cherry Hill, and we've got from Bradenton. Bradenton, did you see that? Bradenton's in the house. St. Augustine is
From
here
St.
as well.
Augustine.
Oh, St. Augustine, excuse me.
I see Bradenton. Absolutely. I see St. Augustine.
Yeah,
Yay. This is great.
yes. Well, welcome. Brenda, I have 12:01, and if it's okay, we will go ahead and formally begin. I know that we will have people joining us as they are able. But I also, in the interest of time, want to make sure that we give you enough time to cover the information. They don't want to hear from me. They want to know from you about LinkedIn. So let me go ahead and formally welcome everyone to LinkedIn for Lawyers. We are delighted to have you here this afternoon and hope that you find value in the webinar. Many of you know us, meaning Princeton Legal Search Group. We're an executive search firm for lawyers all the time. And we recruit in 3 markets: in-house, which we're primarily known for, law firms, and not-for-profits. During this business as unusual time, is the way that I have chosen to describe it, we thought it might be helpful to provide some professional development programs. And what better place to start than LinkedIn? And based on the response and the number of people who have signed up and who are joining us, I think we struck a chord that LinkedIn for Lawyers as a professional development tool is pertinent, relevant to anyone for a number of reasons. If there are additional programs that you would like to hear or see, please either write them into the Q&A section or feel free to contact me directly. If you go to Princeton Legal, you'll see any and all of my contact information if you don't have it readily available. What I would like to do next is to go through a couple of housekeeping items. One is that we are recording the webinar, and you will receive a recording of the program. All participants are in the mute mode, which means that you can't see who else is on the webinar. We have a couple of hundred of people joining us today, and we're thrilled to have you come join us. But it's too many people to put on a Zoom call, so this is a Zoom webinar, which will allow more people to attend. So again, all participants are on mute. If you would like to communicate with Brenda or I, please feel free to use the Q&A tab for questions, both during the program about either the content, and we will have a Q&A section at the end of the program. We will answer as many questions as possible during the webinar, and Brenda has generously offered a 30-minute consult with her post-webinar. And at the last screen that you will see will be her contact information. So it's up to you to reach out to her to schedule a 30-minute session, but that should also allow you to have any questions that are not answered. So let me introduce Brenda. Who is Brenda Edie Stafford? She is a very successful LinkedIn consultant. She has a very successful LinkedIn consulting business, and she is a business owner, a lawyer, and a journalist. She has practiced law with RWJ Barnabas as well as Medco Containment Services or Scripps RX. Brenda and I have worked together in a number of capacities, such as a board of directors, and she is the consummate business professional who knows LinkedIn like the back of her hand. Brenda's contact information for anybody who's joining us now will be included on the screens, which will be sent to you post-event and which will be the last screen, second to last screen that you see today. But with that, let me turn the program over to Brenda so that she can begin to get into the content of the program, which is LinkedIn for Lawyers. We welcome you. We're delighted to have you here today. Brenda, let me turn it to you.
Well, hi, hello to all of you. I hope you're doing well today. We are very excited to have this webinar for you. Let me thank, however, Princeton Legal Search Group, first of all, and principals Mary Claire Garber and David Garber for inviting me to participate with you today. And of course, thanks to all of you. Not only did you register for the webinar, you're actually showing up, and I'm very grateful for that. Thanks so much. So today I'm going to talk about a tool. And this tool can become your golden gateway to networking. You can network with Fortune 500 companies. You can network with industry leaders all over the world, with influencers, and you can even network within your own organization, your colleagues, and your clients. And of course, the tool I'm talking about is LinkedIn. If you could just spend 15 minutes a day on LinkedIn, I know. You're probably saying that's too much time to spend on LinkedIn. Okay, so make it 15 minutes a week. Is that better? I hope. But if you spend 15 minutes a week networking on LinkedIn, I think you'll be very surprised at the results you'll get. And I'm going to convince you why that's very important. But let me acknowledge something. I realize I've used a loaded word, and I've used it several times in the introduction to LinkedIn. That word is networking. Now, here's the thing. Most people I know have either a love relationship with networking or a hate relationship with networking. I don't think I know very many people who are on the fence. But you know, it really doesn't matter whether you love networking or hate networking. We're lawyers and we have to do it. We know we have to do it. We have to network in order to build relationships. We have to network in order to extend influence. We have to promote and advocate our client's position. Sometimes that requires networking with the right people. And we have to network within our own organizations in order to get to where we'd like to go. But I know that networking can take a lot of time. And it takes away the time that you want to spend with your clients. It takes away the time that you really love spending with your family. And let's face it, it takes away time that we need to spend just de-stressing, especially nowadays. So let me call on some wisdom here. I'm going to call on the wisdom of a leadership and career development expert who also teaches organizational behavior at the London School of Economics. You'll see the quote on the screen. But here's what it really boils down to. Here's the thing. When it comes to networking, we know what we're supposed to do. We know that we have to do it, but we just don't want to do it. And so therefore, it never makes our to-do list. And if it does get onto your to-do list, it's never a top priority. But you probably have come up with some reasons why you don't want to network or you don't like networking. And here's something that I've observed. Now, I hope you don't take this as a lawyer joke because I really don't mean this to be a lawyer joke. But I've observed that lawyers and children have something in common. And that is both lawyers and children are uniquely qualified at creating reasons why they don't want to do something or why they shouldn't have to do something. These are objections, and you probably have some of the objections you see on the screen now to using LinkedIn in particular and just networking in general. For example, you're probably saying, what if I breached client confidentiality by posting and sharing things on LinkedIn? And you're probably saying, well, will I get in trouble for giving legal advice if I provide an update or if I share information on LinkedIn? And the other thing that you're probably thinking, well, can I really describe myself as an expert on LinkedIn? Can I say that? Can I boast about my accomplishments on LinkedIn? Will I be violating the rules on attorney advertising? And okay, let's face it, this last one is probably the real reason. You probably don't want to be on LinkedIn because you hate social media. Well, okay, so once again, we're lawyers, and just because there's an objection to something, we are pretty expert at getting around those objections, at overruling those objections. And you probably can do that very easily. For example, if you are concerned about disclosing client information or confidentiality, client breaching confidentiality of your clients, then the simple thing is participate on LinkedIn, but select a topic or a subject or a subtopic that's totally unrelated to what you're doing with your clients. That wouldn't break or breach confidentiality rules or anything like that. You could probably just give an update. You could probably just do general informational postings or sharing of information on LinkedIn. None of that should be considered providing legal advice. Now, when it comes to your hatred of social media, remember this, and here's what I'm going to convince you of today, or at least I certainly will try. LinkedIn should not be lumped in with the other social media that you probably hate. Things like Facebook or perhaps Pinterest. This is not that type of social media. Remember, this is a business tool, and I'm going to show you how you can put that business tool to work so that it can get results for you. So we've reached the point where you're probably wondering, well, okay, maybe I'll try LinkedIn, but let's talk about the value proposition that LinkedIn can offer you. First of all, let's realize that LinkedIn is a search engine, and it's very similar to Google or Bing. And you ask yourself, well, why would people search on Google? Why would people do a search on Bing? And the answer is pretty simple. You go to Google, you go to Bing, you enter in your keywords. And the reason you're doing that is because you've got a problem and you're trying to solve it. You have a leak in your faucet. You're trying to find the best professional plumber to solve that problem for you. And it's no different with LinkedIn. Professionals go to LinkedIn and they search for people who can solve their problems. They search for people like you. You have an expertise. You can probably solve the problem for them, or certainly talk to them and perhaps get hired as the attorney or the law firm that will help them solve the problem. I also know that if you were to Google your own name and you just typed your name into the Google search bar, one of the very first results you're going to get is your LinkedIn profile. And so what that says to me is that Google certainly recognizes that LinkedIn is an important tool that people are going to be using. It's another reason why you should be on LinkedIn. But most of all, LinkedIn is free real estate. Now, what do I mean by free real estate? LinkedIn will allow you to become a member for free. And as a member of LinkedIn, you get a www.com presence on the internet. You don't have to pay a thing for it. If you wanted to do this on your own, you'd probably have to buy a domain, register the domain. You'd have to get hosting. LinkedIn is doing all of that for you at no cost. And besides, there are 660 million people on LinkedIn. And I know that's a big number. Granted, not all of them would be active at the same time or active at all. But with 660 million people, just imagine the opportunity. Imagine the types of connections and networking that you can do. And besides, whether you know it or not, your colleagues and your professional community are on LinkedIn, and you certainly would want to be part of that conversation. You want to be part of that environment, and the LinkedIn will reward you. And here's the important thing. LinkedIn will reward you for being on LinkedIn and being active on LinkedIn. LinkedIn will reward you because it will start suggesting people that you might want to connect with. LinkedIn gathers a lot of information from members, and it will be gathering information from you, that's correct, but LinkedIn can look at your information and realize that you went to a particular law school, you worked at a particular company. LinkedIn will start recommending people for you to connect with, and it even gets better than that. Once you are fully active on LinkedIn, once you have connections on LinkedIn, LinkedIn will start showing your profile to people who might be interested in connecting with you, to people who may be interested in the type of issues that you could solve for them. And so LinkedIn does have a lot of information. In fact, LinkedIn categorizes information by your current position. It categorizes that information by how long you've been in your position. It categorizes information by geographic area. And so you have all of this information. How do you make the best of your time on LinkedIn? Well, the best way of doing that is by zeroing in on your target audience on LinkedIn and making sure you understand your goal on LinkedIn. Define your goal, define your target audience, whether that be career advancement as a goal, client development, industry influencing. Once you do that, I think you'll find that LinkedIn is, the next slide please, pretty easy to negotiate. In any event, let's talk about some of the key strategies that you can use on LinkedIn in order to make your time a well-spent time in order to get results. And one of the most important strategies you can use is to make sure that your LinkedIn profile is optimized. Now, the LinkedIn profile has key sections. It has more than what you see on the screen, but what I'm going to talk about now are the key sections that you should make sure that you polish, that you use to your advantage. Now, the first section is called the URL, and that's nothing more than your .com presence on LinkedIn. Thank you, Mary Claire, that's it. And so the default position for your URL is following your name. You notice all of these random numbers and characters. It's not a very attractive looking URL. It's not a very attractive looking .com. Simple solution to optimize that is simply just delete those characters, delete all of that information, and it's not really even information for you or anyone else. Just delete it and you'll get a much cleaner URL. And in fact, you can actually put this URL on a business card. You could put it on a post, but certainly you don't want to have all of the information behind your name that really is not going to help people. Now, let me mention here, there is an advanced strategy that you can use with your URL on LinkedIn, and it's called a vanity URL. But all that means is, and I've certainly used it with some of my clients on LinkedIn, you add certain keywords that you want people to know you for. If people are searching on LinkedIn, remember it's a search engine, they may be looking for a litigator, or they may be looking for not just a litigator, but a business litigator. And if you can put those keywords in 29 or 30 characters, you can actually create your own vanity URL on LinkedIn, but it's not something you have to worry about. Just get rid of those random numbers and characters and you'll be in good shape.
Brenda, we also are seeing more LinkedIn URLs on resumes as well. That's another application.
I didn't realize that. Thank you for pointing that out, Mary Claire. So by all means, make sure that you optimize that URL by getting rid of those random numbers and characters. Now, here's another fun thing about LinkedIn. Many people are on LinkedIn without a photograph. I urge you, please use a photograph, but make sure it's a professional photograph by a professional photographer, wherever possible. Make sure that it's your photograph, not your photograph in a group, or not your photograph with other people around you or your favorite or your pet. LinkedIn is about you. It's about you as a professional. Make sure that you put a professional photograph on your profile and that your photograph projects a professional image. And Mary Claire, I could use your help right now. I know that you told me about a website. If you're unsure of which photograph to use, you can go to this website and actually they will give you information about how your photograph is being read by other people.
Yes, it's called Photo Feeler. And if you go to photofeeler.com, it's free and you submit your photo and they have a panel of people who have agreed to give feedback, and there's a certain ranking system, and then you get the collective feedback in terms of whether or not it looks professional, or if you look friendly, if you look approachable, if you look confident. So again, going back to your point, Brenda, about know your objective, this is not necessarily Facebook, so you may not necessarily be looking for friends as much as you want to appear confident. And on that note, when we look at LinkedIn profiles, and quite frequently we do, that party you went to may have been the best party you've gone to. It may have been a great night, but it may not be the place where you want to draw your LinkedIn profile picture from. So with what Brenda is saying is spot on. Do make sure that it's professional and that it is a professional representation of you.
And thank you for that, Mary Claire. I knew that you had given me that information. I just could not find it in my notes.
No problem.
But that photograph of you at the party, save it for the real social media platforms. That's not LinkedIn. Remember, LinkedIn is a business tool. I hope you're out there repeating that. I can't hear you, but I hope you're repeating business tool. Okay, anyhow, let's move on to another very important section on your LinkedIn profile. It's called a number of different things. It could be called the header. It could be called the background image. Some people call it a hero image, but it's nothing more than the space that's right behind your photograph on your LinkedIn profile. Now, once again, LinkedIn will give you a default header image, and that default header image is blue with the white lines and the white dots, and the lines are connecting with the dots. It looks like a little something like, you know, the constellation or a Star Wars kind of thing. I believe that you can make better use of that area on your profile by finding a more suitable image that represents the profession. As an attorney, one idea might be to put the scales of justice, or you may have a slogan or a quote that you find particularly important in your line of work and how you approach your work. You could also put your company name as a backdrop. And I didn't mention this earlier, but let me mention it now because I'm going to mention it again throughout this presentation. Make sure that you check with your organization's social media policies. Make sure that you're complying with them, because it's likely that if you are going to be on LinkedIn, your company would supply you with that header image to use behind your photograph on LinkedIn. But if all else fails, here's a source that you can go to. It's a free source, www.canva.com. It's here on the slide, and it's a source of graphics. And in fact, if you go to canva.com and if you put into the search bar LinkedIn header image or LinkedIn background image, it will immediately return to you images, designs that are already measured to fit the header image space on your LinkedIn profile. Did I mention it's free? You don't have to pay anything for this. And that would actually solve your problem very easily, as long, of course, as it complies with your organization's social media policy. Now, let's get to the headline. The headline can be probably no more than 3 lines on LinkedIn. I believe the total number of characters, and I'm pretty certain about this, that you can use for your headline is 200. And the default position that LinkedIn will give you is to put your title as your headline. I'm saying that you can make better use of that space. You can make better use of those 200 characters by not just using your title, but showing what your title can do, showing how you can address your target audience, showing what problem you can solve for them. And the example that I have here, instead of saying that you're a senior associate, mergers and acquisitions at the name of your law firm, you can say, as a senior M&A attorney, I help Fortune 500 companies identify and attain business objectives in corporate transactions. And that sums it up. If someone's looking for, if a Fortune 500 company is looking for someone with those qualifications, they're going to find you. That would be a good thing, right? Or you could take a different approach. You could use the keywords that I mentioned for your vanity URL and use those as your headline for your LinkedIn profile. For example, you could be a family law attorney, litigation, divorce consultation. You see where I'm going here. This particular example, the person's profile is using, she wants people to know that she's also a motivational speaker and an author. That's all valid because she has identified her target audience, and these are the keywords that would resonate with them. I really like this next section. The next section is called the About section on your LinkedIn profile. And let me just assure you that LinkedIn or your target audience really doesn't want this to be about you. They want to know not just about you, but how can you solve their problem? How do you appeal to their pain points? This is an opportunity to create a statement that appeals to your target audience's pain points. Don't leave this as just a random section on your LinkedIn profile. It's very important. Make sure that you complete it by showing how you solve your clients or how you solve your target audience's problems, and make sure to mention those pain points. The last section I want to talk about in depth is your experience section. The urge is to copy and paste your resume in the experience section. But I would suggest that you would get more mileage out of that section if you include your current positions and your past positions, but show how you helped your employer. Demonstrate how you helped your client. Did you exceed departmental goals? Did you achieve desirable outcomes for your clients? You can say that in general terms. If you could put it in a number, if you could put it in a percentage, all of that will help your experience section truly demonstrate who you are on LinkedIn.
I like to refer to this as, what have you done for me lately? It's answering that question, what have you done for me lately? And can you quantify or qualify your existence or your accomplishments, right?
That's absolutely right, Mary Claire. And I think that if you could keep that in mind, keep all of this in mind when you are going through your LinkedIn profile, which I hope you will do after this webinar, go through it and make sure that you are taking advantage of everything that LinkedIn has to offer you for free. Now, there's some other sections that are important, but that's your education. Make sure that you fill that in. Make sure that if you've won awards, if you have accomplishments, if you speak a foreign language, make sure to include that in your profile. It's much further down in your profile, but it all counts when people are searching for someone with your qualifications. Now, I love this slide because it may seem a little corny, but I'm going to tell you why it's very important and how it can work for you. LinkedIn will provide you with a profile strength meter. And from time to time, LinkedIn, you may see a message pop up saying, hey, let's strengthen your profile. If you add this particular section, or if you make sure to include this piece of information, your LinkedIn profile will get stronger. And once you've covered all of the sections that I've talked about, once you have added anything that LinkedIn suggests that you add, you get rewarded. You get rewarded with a badge. You get rewarded with an all-star badge. Now you wonder, well, who cares? Well, I'll tell you who cares. When people are looking for someone with your background and qualifications, once again, LinkedIn is a search engine. They put in their keywords. Your profile will pop up near the top of the results list as opposed to below the fold or on page 2. You want to get all-star status. You want to make sure that people find you and not find you on page 2 or 3 or way down the list, but at the top of the list. How many times do you, if you're searching on Google, how many times do you go to page 2 if you find your search results? You usually look for your answers in the top 3 pack is what they call it on Google, but you certainly do look for your answers on LinkedIn in the top section of your search results. So let's go get that all-star status. I think that's an important thing. Now, I thought it might be helpful to go through a couple of LinkedIn profiles and to see just where they stand on the profile strength meter. So this guy, I really wish this guy was on this webinar today. He has the blue background, the default background. And hey, and if you even look at his URL, he didn't bother to take or delete those random numbers and characters from his URL. He still has them there. And I don't know about this photograph. I can't tell who's in this photograph.
Excuse me, sorry.
It's okay. Thank you, Mary Claire. I can't tell who's in this photograph. He has not taken advantage of the headline space below his name. But if you notice, he still has 417 connections and he has 40,000 followers. So I guess for him, it really doesn't matter. But for me, it matters. For you, it matters. And so let's take a look at another LinkedIn profile that I think may be a little better than the one we just looked at. So let me first of all say I have Nancy's permission to use this profile on this webinar today. And I thank her, if she's on the webinar, I thank her for giving me this permission. But if you notice, Nancy has a professional photograph. In fact, I've read some statistics that suggest your photograph should fill about 60% of the allotted space on your LinkedIn profile. I think Nancy's done a good job of that. If you look at her URL, you'll see that she has removed those random characters and letters from that URL, which means she can use that URL on a business card. She can use it on a resume, as Mary Claire pointed out. She has also indicated the name of her company behind on that header graphic space. She has indicated how long she's been in business. This is information that you will see at a glance by just looking at her profile. And she's also told you how to get in touch with her right up front. She's included an email address. So if you're looking for her, if her profile comes up, you don't even have to read that far down in order to find out how to get in touch with Nancy.
If I could just add, see here where it says contact information.
Yes.
If you're using LinkedIn, you can click on that contact information, and sometimes individuals will have their phone number and or personal email address there as well, just as an FYI.
That's important. That's important information to know. But let me just also say about that contact information, LinkedIn now is giving members and users the option of hiding that information. If you go to the privacy settings on your LinkedIn profile, you will have the option of showing that information or not. But hey, we're on LinkedIn because we want to be found. So make sure that you have that information available for people who want to find you. So the last thing I want to mention about Nancy's LinkedIn profile, you can only see the first 3 lines, and that's going to be the case in most. When you go to someone's profile, you will only be able, in the About section, you'll only be able to see the first 3 lines, and then LinkedIn will ask you to click the link to see more. But if you were to click that link, you'll find out how Nancy actually is helping her clients in divorce settings, helping her clients in family law situations, bringing them value. She incorporates all of that into about 2,000 characters, which is what LinkedIn will give you for completing your About section on LinkedIn. And so overall, I think Nancy's done a great job.
Brenda, if I could just underscore these words, these are called keyword search words or keyword search terms, whether it's litigation, divorce consultation, collaborative family law, and everybody's are probably going to be slightly different. So it's like if you're a commercial transactional lawyer, if you put that right up front here, when a search practice is Googling commercial transactional or business transactional, you're going to come up. The keywords, Brenda mentioned it before, and I'm just going to emphasize it as many times and as close to the top of the profile as possible, so that you can make that link, you can make that connection to somebody's pain points.
A good point. Thank you very much, Mary Claire. In fact, what we really are looking at when we look at a profile, you take maybe 10 seconds to go through someone's LinkedIn profile. Don't make them look all through the profile to see how great you are. Put it up front, put it at the very top. When I was a journalist, they called that the lead in your story. You put the most important information up front because there's no guarantee that people are going to read all the way through your story. That's the same thing with LinkedIn. So thank you very much. So I've talked about how you can get results on LinkedIn. We've talked about how you can optimize your LinkedIn profile. We've talked about how you can maximize the time that you spend on LinkedIn by defining your target audience, defining your goals on LinkedIn. And I am suggesting that you spend 15 minutes a day putting your LinkedIn profile to work for you. And I know, I stand corrected. I think I said earlier that even if you only did 15 minutes a week, I think you'll find that it's time well spent. On a regular basis, whether it's daily or not, spend some time looking for prospects, looking for people, searching for people who meet the criteria for your target audience. Once you found them, connect with them. And that's a very simple thing to do. LinkedIn has a messenger platform, and what you do is you message them by saying, hello, I came across your profile and I noticed that we both attended the same law school. I'd like to add you to my professional network. I hope you'll accept this invitation to connect. They will probably connect with you, but I can tell you this, the first thing they'll do before they click that accept button is they're gonna go back and look at your profile. They're gonna go back and look at whether you are someone they want to connect with. And they will connect with you by clicking accept. Now, you are building your network by doing this on a regular basis. On the LinkedIn profile, it's something I probably should have pointed out, but LinkedIn will only show that you have, for example, 500 plus connections. If you have fewer than 500 connections, LinkedIn will show the actual number of connections. In fact, if you go back to that other guy, I believe his name was Kutcher, what was his name?
Ashton Kutcher.
I know, I'm just joking.
That guy.
That guy. If you go back to his profile, you'll see that he only had 417 connections. He hasn't quite made that, tipping point where LinkedIn will say 500 plus. And it only takes 501 and LinkedIn will still say that you have 500 plus connections. But you want to build your network. I believe the maximum number of connections you can have on LinkedIn is 30,000. LinkedIn changes the number sometimes, but let's go around the 30,000 mark. But build your network of people that are part of your target audience. Build your network of people who are influencers, who are in Fortune 500 companies. They may not be your target audience right now, but they could be. So start building that network now. And another important way to spend your time on LinkedIn is by joining LinkedIn groups. There's a search bar at the top of the LinkedIn page, at the top of your profile, and most any page that you land on LinkedIn. You can enter in the names or general industry of groups that you would like to find on LinkedIn. They will return a list of groups for you. Join those groups. And when you join those groups, contribute value. Contribute value not just to the groups that you've joined, but also to your entire network. And what do I mean by that? By sharing a post, by writing an article. But remember, you want to make sure that you do all of this within the guidelines of your organization's social media policy. You rinse and repeat these steps, 15 minutes a day, okay, 15 minutes a week, but make sure to do it regularly, and I believe you'll get the results that you're looking for. So on this slide, I've given you names of groups that might be of interest to lawyers. I believe that I am probably a member of all of these groups. There are many more. I've just touched the tip of the iceberg by listing these interest groups. But play on LinkedIn, search for these groups, find them. You will have to sometimes request permission to join, but I find that people who are in charge, the administrators of these groups, want to make sure that the right people find them. So they're pretty good at getting back to you very quickly to say that you're in the group. Each group, however, will have some rules that you have to follow. For example, I'm a member of groups of marketers, and we have to promise on our oath that we will not be marketing to members within our group, but instead sharing information of interest. And so I am about to sum up my presentation to you today about LinkedIn, about why LinkedIn is so important. And once again, I want to call on the experience of Deepak Chopra. When you are on LinkedIn, when you're engaging in networking, the important thing is that people come together with ideas. It could be 2 people, it could be many people, but you all come together with ideas, you exchange those ideas, and before you know it, very often, you are giving birth to new ideas, and these new ideas might actually solve some of the problems that we are facing today. I urge you, please go to LinkedIn, please treat it as a business tool, and I believe you'll get results, and you'll get the results that you're looking for. So that's all I have for you today. And Mary Claire, if there are questions, perhaps we can take some now. What do you think?
Yes. Somebody has been given advice about that LinkedIn should only be a summary and the specific achievement should be on the resume. And so you have any thoughts as to how deep somebody should go on LinkedIn versus the resume?
Well, certainly there is the section. Let me just take another step back. LinkedIn very often changes the titles of the various sections. I believe at one point, the About section was called Summary. I believe at one point that the Experience section was called something else. But if we're talking about the section where you actually add your employed positions, that is now, I believe, called the Experience section. You certainly want to make sure that you complete that section. I think the only thing that I'm suggesting is that you include metrics, if at all possible, to show, as Mary Claire said, what have you done to improve your client's position? How have you benefited the organization or the employer that you work for? Make sure that you include your jobs and your positions, but add to that what you brought to that position, which also may demonstrate what you're taking away from that position, so that if you were to join someone else's organization, you would bring that with you. I hope I'm answering the question. Let me also go back to the About section. You clearly want to summarize everything that you have in your Experience section, but you're doing it with an eye toward the audience that you're hoping to attract. I believe that there are probably many ways of approaching LinkedIn, and certainly what I've shared with you is the way that I approach it. It's the way that I have worked with my clients and to have them approach it. But if you have been given information that's different, and if that information in particular is related to your current employment, you should probably follow it.
And if I could also weigh in and say that when we are conducting searches and if we're using LinkedIn as a tool to identify candidates that we may either not be in touch with, or sometimes to verify or validate information, if I don't have the resume and I see enough information that's of interest on LinkedIn, I will reach out and ask that person, can we have a conversation? And ultimately ask if they're interested, would they be willing to submit a resume? So I look at LinkedIn and it's again, knowing your audience from a recruiting perspective, is there enough there to entice a recruiter, whether it's me personally or somebody else from Princeton Legal Search Group or another, legal recruiter? Is there enough there to entice the reader to want to ask for more? On the flip side of that, I don't always have time to read an in-depth resume on LinkedIn because I'm using it as an initial place or space to begin to make some new introductions. That's again on the search side. If I'm looking to connect with somebody, I don't need all of the details because what I want is enough information to establish that there's either a common connection, some mutual interest, and to begin to build some kind of rapport. So I would say less is better, but you certainly want to quantify or qualify.
That's good information. And once again, it does go back to knowing your audience, knowing your target
Right.
audience, knowing why you're on LinkedIn for this period of time.
Right.
Let me also
Brenda,
say,
there's several more, so if it's
oh,
okay,
sorry.
we just have to get, there's a
No.
number of them, and I just want to make sure.
Good point.
Can you
Thank
talk
you.
about whether it's appropriate to disclose name of high-profile companies on deals that you close once deals are public?
I think that's an excellent question. I think there are two rules I would ask you to keep in mind. Number one, if you disclose this information, will it be in compliance with your organization's social media policy? And number two, do you have permission from the company, from the client that you represented to use the information in this way? I think that if you weigh those two, if you get permission, I think that you might want to consider doing that. But I go back to, why are you on LinkedIn? Are you on LinkedIn to attract more clients? Is it client development? Or is it to get that next position, to take that next step up? I think that would help inform your answer.
Okay, I just want to make a note here. There are 3 participants that have their hands raised. If I call on you, you're going to be on the webinar live in front of everyone. It would probably be most efficient for you to submit a question through the Q&A, and I'm scrolling down, and we'll try to get to as many as we can so that that everybody has the benefit. All right, next one is, where do I find the profile setting of the profile strength meter to attain the all-star status? Where do people find that?
Generally, I'm trying to do this from memory. If you go to your LinkedIn profile, you will also see at the top, on the top header, you will have an option to go to get more information. I believe it's called privacy settings. In other words, it's under your profile. It's usually on the right-hand side of your profile. You would click that and you get a lot of information. That some of the information will be asking you to make a decision. Do I want to disclose my contact information or not? But you can also find your LinkedIn, your profile meter there, or sometimes LinkedIn will just send you what I call a push notification saying, and it will pop up and say, hey, take a look at your LinkedIn profile, take these steps in order to strengthen the profile. And if you really are having trouble finding it, please feel free to get in touch with me after the webinar, and I'll walk you through how to get to it.
Okay, and then on that note, I did put up Brenda Stafford's contact information. That slide is up as we're going through questions. And Brenda, there's about 3, maybe 4 of these types of questions. How do you remove the random numbers on the URL? Or can you explain how to remove the numbers? So we've gotten a couple of those. Is there, and someone actually also had said that if they take off those numbers, it reverts to somebody else's profile.
That's a good point. In other words, someone else with a similar name, I'm assuming?
Correct. I'm assuming the same.
Okay, so these technical questions actually aren't that hard on LinkedIn, but if you're on your profile, you'll see an icon that looks like a pen or pencil, and that icon will be close to certain sections on your LinkedIn profile. that's the icon where you can edit your profile. That's also the icon where you can edit the URL. And if you remove those random numbers and characters from your URL, this would be an excellent opportunity to include what I call a vanity URL. So you remove the numbers, then you add litigator, or you add commercial transactions. You add something that will distinguish you and your .com URL from someone else's.
Okay. Somebody has asked to put the screen back up for the LinkedIn groups. We will make sure that you get that information. Right now, I have Brenda's contact information up, so I apologize. I'm not going to bring that screen back up so that people can get Brenda's contact information, but you will receive it in the package. Somebody has asked, I'm going to ask this in general terms, has asked about staying at home and raising a family, and how do you address that? Whether it's staying at home and raising a family, whether it's having taken some time for whatever the reason may be, how do you handle that on LinkedIn?
That's a good question. I find myself wondering how to handle the fact that I've had 3 careers in a resume and on LinkedIn. I think that what you do is spend some time thinking and outlining, number one, what your goal is for being on LinkedIn. What audience are you trying to attract? But more importantly, is there a common denominator in what you're doing? What management skills have you learned from staying at home? That may be one way of approaching it. But you know something, Mary Claire, you see more resumes than I do. And if you have anything to add here, please feel free.
Sure, and I'm just going to maybe take it one step further. If whether you're staying at whatever you're staying at home for, or I don't want to say staying at home, because raising a family is not staying at home. It's
No,
the opposite, right? It's a complete opposite. So taking some time off to do something non-legal. Let's define it that way in kind of a broad bucket. What did you learn? What did you accomplish? If indeed, let's say there were some fundraising opportunities that you were able to raise money for a nonprofit, or you were on a board of a nonprofit while you were doing whatever else you were doing that was non-legal related. So again, if you can quantify or qualify any of that time, that's helpful to demonstrate that you were also looking at returning to your legal profession and building skills or competencies that would be relevant either to being a lawyer in a business, in a company environment, or in a law firm, or in a not-for-profit. The next question we have here is, if I'm applying to a job posted on LinkedIn that just links to the company's career site, are there any tricks or tips to use LinkedIn to get noticed?
Well, I believe you're asking, you've identified a job that you'd like to apply for on LinkedIn, and that when you click the link, you're asking how you can get the company to notice you. I would hope that the link you've clicked would take you to a site where you can get more information. If you have the name of the company, you can certainly take your next steps off of LinkedIn and go to the internet, search out that company perhaps, find if they have a section for new positions, or if you can reach out to someone in charge of HR, if they have in-house recruiters for that organization. I would like to get a bit more detail though about what happens when you click that link in order to be able to give you perhaps some more an appropriate answer.
One of the suggestions that I would make is to see who you know, and this is why building your network becomes valuable and important, but who in your network might work at that organization. And if you can use one of your LinkedIn contacts to either make an introduction outside of LinkedIn. LinkedIn is an excellent starting point, but it's not the be-all, end-all, if you will. It's a place to find information, to find contact, whether it's information, contacts, or referrals, to begin to use that contact within your network to leverage into the organization.
Good, another good point, Mary Claire. Thank you.
Great.
But
There's a
oh,
couple
sorry.
others here. They're coming
Okay.
in. They're coming in. So,
Okay, I'm here. I'm here.
I'm new to LinkedIn. I thought people posted their resumes on their LinkedIn site as supplemental info.
Okay. I think what you're asking is whether you can, in addition to completing your LinkedIn profile, whether you can add a document. The answer is yes, you can. You can add a PDF document on LinkedIn, but just be aware that that resume is not going to be returned in search results. It's usually not a searchable document. The only thing that's searchable on LinkedIn is information that's in your profile. If you add the resume as a document, it would be an additional piece to your profile, but certainly not something that you would want to rely on anyone necessarily finding. They may find it or they may not.
Okay. What are your thoughts about listing skills and accepting endorsements with respect to the rules of professional responsibility?
I think that's a good question. Let me refer you, first of all, back to your organization's social media policy. Endorsement can be a little tricky. Lawyers sometimes don't want to be endorsed on LinkedIn. And I think also you have to refer to the rules of professional conduct in your jurisdiction. You may even want to get an opinion on whether or not you can accept an endorsement. I think it might be specific to certain jurisdictions. The answer may vary, but make sure that you don't get in trouble with the rules of professional conduct. You don't get in trouble with your current employer before you go out and get endorsements.
Okay. And this will be the last question we're going to have time for. How do you signal that you're ready for a career move without making it obvious to current connections, many of which are colleagues or current company executives?
I think that goes back to who are you connected with? I would hope that your network is broader than just your employer or your current work colleagues. I would hope that perhaps you're connected with people who might be able to help you take that next step, or companies where you would like to land. If you have a broad enough network, there is a way to utilize them so that you're not necessarily signaling that you want to move, but you reach out to them, perhaps connect on LinkedIn, and you take your conversation off of LinkedIn. Let me just say this. As Mary Claire pointed out, LinkedIn is a good starting point, but none of us really controls the platform. The only platform that you can control is one that you create. You take it off LinkedIn, either in a private phone call, private email messages. That would be my solution to that.
Great. Thank you, everyone who submitted questions. I will forward them to Brenda, and if you've given me permission, I will make sure that she knows who you are so that she can respond back to you. And with that, Brenda, two things. One, I'm not sure if everybody who's here now was on the call initially. Brenda has offered a 30-minute session with anybody who has attended the seminar webinar today, and her contact information is here. The obligation would be for you to reach out to her. Everybody will receive a copy of the slides as well as the recording from today's webinar, and we are thrilled and delighted that you were able to join us for a dynamic, informative session. It's like touching the tip of the iceberg, right? There's so much about LinkedIn. And on that note, I welcome feedback on professional development types of programs that may be valuable during this time as, again, what I call business as unusual. If there are other top LinkedIn topics or programs, certainly feel free to reach out to me. You can get in touch with me through Princeton Legal Search Group or on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect on LinkedIn.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Reach out and connect. Connect to me, connect to Mary Claire. It's easy and it's free.
Brenda, thank you very much for your time, for your information, for the thorough analysis of the sections of that LinkedIn profile and how it relates to our meter score. and how important that meter score is by pushing us toward the top of the search engine within LinkedIn. That's really valuable and information to know. And I thank again everybody for joining us. Have a great rest of the day. Happy Tuesday.
Thank you. Thank you all. Bye.
Bye-bye.